right, perfect. Let's go ahead and start going over these answers. I will send out the links in the chat box too, though. Here is the link for my class, Miss Larkin. Here's the link for Mr. Bangle's class. And remember, try both links. One will work, one won't. And then refresh your grades tab. You should be able to also access it from your grades tab. Taking a look here. So yes, if you do 20 divided by 5, you should definitely be getting 4. Right? If you then reverse it and do 5 divided by 20, that actually gives you a fraction or a decimal because the smaller number comes first. And so yes, the correct answer here would be 0.25. That looks awesome there. So that's just a reminder to make sure that in your calculator you are plugging things in the correct order. So make sure you're paying attention to which number comes first. Because we will be using our calculator today. There is a question that you have to do on your own, so you do need to know how to use your calculator. Keep in mind that if we then make one of those negative, if only one of the numbers is negative, then our answer does end up being negative. So negative 12 divided by 6. 12 divided by 6 is normally 2, but because there's a negative, that gives you a negative 2. Smiley faces emojis in the chat box if that makes sense. Again, it's the normal calculation, but then just make it negative because we know this is a negative number. Excellent. Same thing over here. If we flip it one more time, again, paying attention to your calculator, you would be getting 1/2 or 0.5. But again, one of these numbers is negative, so this would actually be negative 0.5. And then last but not least here, 21 divided by 7 would normally give us 3. All right, and when we have two negatives, a negative divided by a negative, remember that actually cancels out, and we actually end up with a positive 3, positive 3. Go ahead and one more time, give me a green check, orange X if all of that's beginning to make sense. Green checks, orange X's if all of that is beginning to make sense. Excellent. Waiting on Mallory, Mallory, Kamal, Kamal, Itati, Itati, Brianna, Brianna, Malachi, Malachi, Alexander, Seraphim, Lena, Lena, John, John, John. Thank you, John. Let's see here. Kalina, waiting on Edwin, Edwin, Anissa, Anissa, and Tim, Tim, Tim. Thank you. Awesome. All right, everyone, let me go ahead and remind you that you do need to be doing your notes during class. Remember that if you do notes after class, then you get only notes credit. On the other hand, if you do notes during class, then you get both notes credit and attendance credit. Remember, that's the only way that we count attendance. We do not have a word of the day, and you can't just log in. You do actually need to be participating. You do actually need to be doing your notes. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into this. This is a reminder, please do not share contact info. Please participate often and well and behave appropriately. Don't forget that these sessions are being recorded. All right, so we are on day 9 out of 60, quickly getting into the teens pretty soon next week. So today we're taking a look at our newest unit, the 2A Intro to Motion unit. This is a reminder that yesterday your Unit 1 airplane, paper airplane project was technically due. I'll talk about that in a moment. But please remember that this is worth over 70% of your grade, so you really need to make sure this gets submitted because otherwise it is impossible to pass the class. So please make sure that you submit your Unit 1 airplane project. Don't forget that these are graded on a scale that benefits you. So they're graded on a 5 through 10 scale, which means as long as you provide a valid attempt, meaning you don't have any blanks and you don't have any random or nonsense or let me say stupid, right? Because that means that you just filled it in silly, all right? Don't have any random answers, then you will get the lowest grade you can get is a 50%. Yeah, sure thing, Lexi. You're my last period, so always feel free to stay after and chat a little bit if you need help on anything. So it does need to be clear that, all that being said, it needs to be clear that you watch the recordings and actually followed along with the recordings, because the recordings go over every step, every slide, as well as the recordings give you a ton of the answers. So you really, really, really need to be watching the recordings, following along in your template, along with the template that I'm doing in the recordings, okay? So as long as you provide a valid attempt, the lowest grade you could possibly get is a 50%. And honestly, it's really, students are always surprised, but as long as you try pretty hard on these and you actually do your best effort, it's really easy to get an A or B on them. Okay, so as long as you're actually trying on them, again, our goal is not to penalize you for what you don't know, but to celebrate what you do know. So this is to your advantage. This is not like an exam where I'm nitpicking everything. This is something that I'm trying to get you to engage with the material and to do well on it, okay? No, you can always turn things in at any point. I was going to just mention that, Joseph H, that this was technically due at 4 p.m. yesterday. I won't zero it out until Monday though, so feel free to take the weekend to finish it up. Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's what I want to hear, Lexi. Just try your best on it. Yeah, and nothing in my class is ever penalized for being late. Obviously, you might feel stressed out because things build up over time. That's why we have deadlines to try to keep you on pace. But yeah, we don't penalize for things being late. The only exception is attendance. Attendance you can only earn during class if you do your notes during class and if you're participating in class. Okay? The reason for that is because we need actual evidence, like as our Insight administration requires teachers to show actual evidence that you are here and that you are not like ghosting us. So just so you know. Okay, cool. So we are taking a look at motion and forces in this unit. So now we're getting into more of the fun physics stuff. So we're going to talk about motion today. We will be completing the 2A notes. So we're going to talk about motion and the difference between speed and velocity. We're also going to learn how to actually calculate velocity using displacement and time. So at this point, I do need you to have your notes open and ready to go. Again, here is my version if you are on my roster. Here is Mr. Bangle's version if you are on Mr. Bangle's roster. And go ahead and try both links. One will work, one won't. Or just go to your grades tab and raise your hands. You have 30 seconds. Here we go.
Travels 8 miles in 1 hour. What is the speed of the car? All right, so try and just type or make a text box on the whiteboard and put your answer beneath that first question. If it's traveling 88 miles in 1 hour, yes, thank you. Get my pointer out. 88 miles in 1 hour, what is the speed of the car? Think of cars in real life, right? What do we say their speed is in? Oh yeah, you can type in the chat too, that's also okay. Yeah, mph or miles per hour. Awesome. Yeah, just because someone already answered, that doesn't mean you can't answer, right? This is good practice. Okay, so then moving on, if you wanted to move on from that, the second question is going to be, if the car is traveling at this speed for 3 hours in total, how far will the car have gone in total? So the total distance is going to be the second part of the question. So 3 hours, if it travels 88 miles in 1 hour, right, we're going to multiply it by 3. So that's a hint. So 88 times 3 should give us 264 miles. Yes, thank you, Alexander. You remember that we need units with our answers. Yeah, thank you, Joseph. All right, remember our units, because our units for distance that we start with are miles, we want miles for our last answer.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about that. Yeah, sorry, I didn't get the answer up here, so let me put the answer up here. Yeah, this was 264 miles.
Yeah,
awesome.
264.
All right, so let's go ahead and take a look here. Motion describes how an object moves from one position or location to another. So these are some vocab words that we're going to learn here. So motion, again, just explains how something is moving, goes from one place to another. Now, there are two different terms that we're going to be learning today and that we need to learn what their difference is. So we're going to learn about speed and velocity. Often these are used as synonyms. Smiley faces if you have heard of both of these terms before. Smiley faces if you have heard of both of these terms before in the chat. Yeah, so you often will hear them used as synonyms, meaning that they're used interchangeably, kind of as the same meaning. There is, however, a slight difference. So speed in general is just how fast you're changing position. All right, we measure this in distance per time. The one that we're going to be using in our class the most often is actually meters per second, because meters is the distance unit we use for distance, and seconds is the units that we use for time. We learned about that in last unit. But you could also think about miles per hour, right? Those are kind of set up the same, right? Meters per second or miles per hour. Both have a unit for distance right here and a unit for time right here. Okay, so an example here would be 3 meters per second, or m/s. Per is a division sign, so m/s. All right, now the important thing about speed is the direction does not matter. Think about this. If I'm going 3 miles per hour forwards or 3 miles per hour in reverse in my car, does my speedometer ever go negative? Tell me in the chat box, does my speedometer ever go negative? Even if I'm going in reverse in my DeLorean or in my car, does the speedometer ever go negative? No, it doesn't. We only have positive speeds on the car. So regardless, whatever direction you're ever going in, your car always says that you have a positive speed. So that's important to think about here. That speed, the direction does not matter. Okay, so speed, direction does not matter. It's always a positive number. It's always a positive number. Velocity, on the other hand, is very similar to speed, but it's actually speed with direction. This means that velocities can actually be negative if you're going in what is considered a negative direction. So for example, if you're going 3 meters per second to the right, the velocity would be a positive 3 because right is the positive direction. Okay, often that's how we generally label them. If you're going 3 meters per second to the left, though, that's actually the opposite direction. And to represent that as an accurate velocity, you actually need to put a negative in front of that number. That's why I started you off with your brain stretch, making sure that you were familiar with how to use negatives in your calculator or how to add negatives to your answers, right? So going to the left is actually negative 3 meters per second. Go ahead, give me a green check or an orange X if that's beginning to make sense. Speed, direction does not matter. It's always a positive. Velocity, you can have negatives because velocity direction does matter. Green check.
So practicing motion, go ahead, use your whiteboard tools, use thin lines, and let's try to match our three terms of motion, speed, and velocity. All right, and our three definitions are stating that one of them includes both speed and direction. One of them describes how an object moves from one position to another, and the third one describes how fast an object changes position. So match those up with the correct terms. Yeah, so it appears that most of us were correct. Let me make sure and go back. Yeah, most of us were correct. So motion is describing how an object moves from one position to another. If I move, like let's say on a graph, if I move from position 1 to position 3, that is describing my motion. However, if I'm talking about speed, that is how fast I change that position. So am I moving in terms of a car, right? Am I moving 1 mile in an hour, or am I moving that same distance 1 mile in 3 hours, right? So that would be my speed. And then finally, velocity is not just speed, it is direction. So am I moving 3 miles in an hour to the right or to the left? Right? Or am I moving 3 miles an hour towards LA or away from LA, right? If we're in Southern California.
Go ahead and take a look at that and fill in number 2. Fill in number 2 and then go ahead and raise your hand for number 2.
Yeah, so to calculate velocity is very simple. It is displacement traveled and the amount of time. So we have our formula right here in green. So velocity, in terms of its symbol, we're always going to describe in terms of a fancy looking V with an arrow over it. The arrow is what is denoting that it's traveling in a specific direction. Its units are always going to be in meters per second, which we represent by an m/s. The displacement is going to be a triangle with an x. The triangle just means the difference in displacement, which means we have an initial distance and a final distance. And those units are always going to be in meters. So our example is 6 meters. And then time, which is going to be our triangle, which we call delta. So delta t is just a difference in time, and that's going to be in seconds. So if we take our example numbers here and we plug them into our formula, we should get that 6 divided by 2 should be 3. And I believe we have that here. Or maybe we don't. Okay. But for number 3, we're going to put calculate for our notes. And then for number 4, we're going to write displacement. All right, I forgot to mention that displacement, remember, is technically the shortest length between 2 points. So if we look at the example down here, we have that the total distance is that weird curvy path that they take in the dotted purple line, but the displacement is the shortest distance between 2 points, all right, in that path. Okay, so is the shortest path taken. Remember, velocity includes both speed and direction. So for velocity, we could have a negative answer or we could have a positive answer. So for number 3, please write calculate, and for number 4, please write displacement.
All right, so let's go ahead and actually try this out. So let's calculate a sloth's velocity. So a sloth is walking to the right for 1.5 meters in 3.6 seconds. What is the sloth's velocity? Tell me in the chat box, what am I solving for? Again, take a look at the what is part and tell me in the chat, what are we actually solving for? Go ahead and tell me in the chat. Excellent, I see Cody in the chat. Get some more answers. What are we solving for? Yeah, exactly, Kamal. We are solving for velocity. So that means that we're going to use an equation for velocity, which makes sense because this is the velocity lesson. Now, taking a look here, 1.5 meters right here. Meters is the unit for what? Tell me in the chat box, look at the table down here. Meters is the unit for what? Yes, this is our units for displacement or distance, right? So this 1.5 meters is going to be my displacement, what I plug in for x. And seconds is my unit for what? Go ahead and take a look here. Seconds is what? So this is our delta x, our change in displacement, our change in position, our displacement. What is seconds? Thank you, Kalina. Thank you, Cody. Yeah, this is going to be our time, our change in time. So let's go ahead and actually plug that in. So this right here is our time. So on top, I'm going to go ahead and put the displacement. So what number should I put on top? Based on what we annotated, what number should I put on top? Yeah, so 1.5 goes on top, and what goes in for time? Based on what we annotated, what goes in for time? Beautiful, yes, 3.6. And if I were to divide that, 1.5 divided by 3.6, I'm going to go ahead and Google the word calculator. All right, that's, remember, is a way to grab a calculator on your computer, is just to Google the word calculator. Let me go ahead and share this with you. Tell me in the chat box, what are you getting? Tell me in the chat box, what are you getting either on your phone or on your computer? Again, we're doing 1.5 divided by 3.6. Make sure your first number is the top one. 1.5 divided by 3.6. Thank you, Kalina. Thank you, Cody. Get some more answers in the chat box. I see Cody put some units on there too. That's what I like to see. Let's go, let's go. Make sure that you know how to use your calculator because again, you have to do the last question on your own. Last question on your own. So make sure you're practicing with us. Thank you, Lexi. Thank you, Kamal. Yeah, so taking a look here, you should be getting 0.41. You'll notice that the number after the 1 is a 6, which actually means it's a big number. So I should actually round 1 up to 2. Go ahead and give me a smiley face if that makes sense. So I'm going to actually put 0.42 because the 6 is a big number following that number. All right, anytime you have a big number, you can round up. All right, perfect. So let's go ahead and drop that back into our slide here. So taking a look here, our answer should therefore be 0.42. So this is going to be our answer for number 5. Go ahead and raise your hands. In the first box, you put 0.42, and in the second box, you should put meters per second. Make sure you spell it exactly as you see it up on the board. Otherwise, the computer will mark it wrong. So 0.42 in the first box, and then in the second box, you should have meters per second. So let me show you what that looks like. Raise your hands for number 2. You have 30 seconds. Raise your hands for number 2. How do you think your answer would change if your sloth walked to the left? Remember, direction matters. So take a look. What happens when our sloth walks to the left instead of to the right? Take a look at what's happening to our numbers. What do you think would happen to our answer based on what's happening to the numbers down here for if our sloth walked in the other direction? Excellent. I see Cody, I see Kalina, I see Lexi, I see Alex. Yeah, they're becoming more and more negative, right? So if we were to go to the left, then our direction, our velocity, because direction matters, our velocity would actually become negative because it's going in the negative direction. Go ahead, give me a green check, orange X, everyone, if that is beginning to make sense. Green check, orange X, if that makes sense. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at our next slide. Here we go. And let's go ahead and try to calculate this one.
So the car is traveling forward 13 meters in 2.7 seconds. What is its velocity? All right. So firstly, what are we solving for? What are we solving for? Quickly, just someone type it in the chat. What are we solving for? Excellent. Thank you, Lexi. So we're solving for velocity. And 13 meters is in the, yeah, 13 meters is the displacement. Thank you, Lexi. I thought I was talking in direction, but yeah, 13 meters is the displacement. So what is the 2.7 seconds representing then, if the 13 meters represents displacement? Yeah, time. So there we go. So we know, let me type this in here. Goes into the formula up at the top, and so we can solve, right? So we're going to plug in 13 up here, and then the 2.7 seconds is going to go down below for our time, right? So plug that into your calculator, and then let's see what we get. And what I'm getting is 4.81. So it's going to repeat, right? Decimal place for the 8 is a 1, right? That's a small number, so we're not going to round up. So we're going to leave it as 4.8 meters per second. All right. So go ahead, mark that answer for number 6. Remember, the first box is going to be 4.8. The second box is going to be for that meters per second, or m/s.
All right, we're going to do one more practice problem together. Again, make sure you are really comfortable with how to do this, because the next one you need to be able to do on your own. So make sure again that you have your calculators out and that you understand how to annotate this. So taking a look here, a bird dives down 42 meters in 1.9 seconds. What is its velocity? Sorry, taking a look here, 42 meters, is that our a velocity, displacement, or time? Tell me in the chat box, meters, is that a velocity, displacement, or time? So yeah, this is actually our displacement. Smiley faces in the chat box if that makes sense. This is our displacement or our distance, right? So meters is a displacement or a distance. Excellent. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and plug in here on top is 42 meters on top. And then taking a look here, 1.9 seconds. Seconds is the unit for what? Is that a velocity or a time? Velocity or a time? Excellent. I see Lexi working. I see Cody working. I see Jaime working. Yeah, this one is going to be our time. T for time. And so that one will go on the bottom. And you should have noticed that velocity actually does not have a number yet. That's actually what we're solving for. So 1.9 seconds goes on the bottom, and what I'm solving for right here is velocity. So grab your calculators. I need at least 10 people answering me before I move on to the one where you try it on your own. Sorry, I did want to mention we are going downwards. So this distance, this displacement right here, is that positive or negative? Tell me in the chat box. If I'm going in the downward direction, should that displacement be positive or negative? Tell me in the chat. Thank you, Lexi. Thank you, Kaden. Thank you, Cody. Jaime. Yeah, this one's going to be negative. So go ahead, grab your calculators. Please do 42 divided by 1.9 and then make your answer negative. Go ahead and tell me, what are you getting? What are you getting? Excellent. I see Jaime. I see Lexi. Yeah, don't forget those units, Jaime. Start getting used to using those. Same thing, Matthew. Number looks great, but add those units. Excellent, Matthew. Good correction. I see Cody in the chat. Need at least 6 more people participating, because I need to know that you can do this on your own before we jump into the next problem. Thank you, Itati, Shayna, Kalina. Beautiful, beautiful. Excellent. So taking a look here, yes, you should get 22.1. And then since one of our numbers is negative, it should actually become negative. So negative 22.1, and units should be meters per second. That will be our answer to number 7. Go ahead and raise your hands for number 7. You have 20 seconds. Again, the first blank is the number. Don't forget the negative sign. Otherwise, the computer will mark it wrong. And the second blank is the units, meters/seconds, meters per second. Taking a look at this one, you need to be able to do this one on your own. I will go ahead and help you annotate it though. So a firebolt can travel forwards across a 500-meter long Quidditch pitch in 8 seconds. What is the firebolt's velocity? So taking a look here, 500 meters, is that a velocity, a displacement, or a time? Tell me in the chat. Meters, is that a velocity, displacement, or... Yeah, this is going to be our displacement or our delta x, right? So, sorry, here we go. Let's go ahead and put that. So this is our delta x. All right, so that's what you should be plugging in on top. And then 8 seconds. Seconds, is that the velocity or the time? Seconds, is that velocity or time? Yeah, this is our change in time. So that's what we should be plugging in on the bottom. Remember, the top number goes in first. to our calculator, top divided by the bottom. And then if we are going in the forwards direction, do you think your answer should be positive or negative? If we're going in the forward direction, do you think your answer should be positive or negative? Think about forwards. Yeah, your answer should be positive. So make sure your answer is positive, no negatives. And don't forget, units for this should be what? Units for this should be what? Yeah, it should be meters per second. Yeah, so units, as always, should be meters per second. All right, so that'll be your unit. So all you need to do is plug in that top number, plug in that bottom number, top divided by the bottom. Make sure your answer is positive, and then make sure you don't forget your units. This is number 8. Go ahead and take 30 seconds to answer that, and then I will go ahead and wrap you up. If you are ready to submit it, and let us know if you got an A or a B in the chat. Yeah, if you want to check your answers, we are in the Q&A chat. Cool beans, everyone. All right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up really fast. We talked about speed and velocity and how to calculate velocity. Let's go ahead and stop our recording here.